special guest. Now, I want to introduce this guy. If you're in the field, well, if you're a veteran or in the services, this guy's your guy.
Yes.
Okay, so I have questions. So what we're trying to do on my channel is we try to educate people when it comes to buying their first house, or maybe your second house, or maybe your first investment property, whatever it might be. We're just here to try to educate you guys on when you decide to do that. What are the steps that you need to take, to get it accomplished? So, had a friend of mine, Dave. Okay, let me explain to you what Dave is. He's our VA specialist, but he lives, he breathes, he eats this stuff. So, Dave, welcome, buddy. Tell them a little bit about your background.
Yeah.
So
Thank you, Dan.
Intriguing part, folks.
So I've been in the lending space for the last 16 years and been serving in the Army for the last 14 years. So I started off in the infantry unit, switched to intel, and just been doing that ever since. So I'll tell you that hitting the ground doesn't get any softer, but I continue to do it. And about 6 years ago, I really started focusing in on working with military members because I saw the need for people to just get some basic information on how their benefits work, because a lot of military members get turned away from using their VA home loan, right? It's just kind of crazy to me. So I really branched into that and just kind of took it home, like you said, eat, breathe it, eat it, literally, day in, day out. And, I love helping the community.
So just go over all the organizations you're part of too, because that's the intriguing part of it. It's not like you're just doing loans. I mean, you're out there doing education to veterans all over the country.
Right. So what I do with VA Housing Education, it's a platform to educate military members on leveraging the VA home loan. I also do this for the real estate community because I teach for the National Association of Realtors Military Relocation Professional Certification. And I'm also a contributor for that course where we teach the real estate community on how the VA home loan works, how veterans can actually benefit from using that product and actually being able to implement it. And then also with various nonprofit, like veteran nonprofit organizations, especially like out in the Chicagoland area and the DMV, just working with them on educating their military folks on just, from budget, credit, and understanding the VA home loan, because everybody wants to be a homeowner, or at least you need a place to live, right? No one wants to be a homeless veteran. You don't want to be a statistic, right? But it's either you're renting, you're actually buying something, or maybe you have the best of both worlds and you live rent free with your parents. I don't know what's the best option. So just kind of having that ability to, know the loan and leverage it. But to your point, like we do this across the country. We do presentations all the time. And we also do custom presentations for organizations that focus on military or have a veteran affinity group, because majority of big corporations do. And then also military units, no matter if you're active duty, guard, or reserve, or it's like a VFW where it's a bunch of veterans that never realized that, hey, I'm 80 years old. I actually can still use the VA home loan. And we've helped a lot of people in their 70s and 80s buy a home for the first time because they didn't even realize that they still had their benefits. Like, how crazy is that?
Right. And that's why actually Dave joined our team, because I need a person to help our VA borrowers. So I've known Dave. What happens a lot of times is, here's the funny thing is, Dave knows more than the underwriters in almost every case. So we've had loans where we've put through our bank and they've come back to Dave and said, I can't do that. And Dave gets back on the horn, and I usually get an email saying, hey, Dave just called. And I'm like, okay, good. But did he change your mind? Well, he taught us things we didn't know. And that goes after lender after lender after lender. So this is why he's a huge part of our team, because, veterans need help. And a lot of times what we forget to is civilians. Many times I even I forget to ask people, are you a veteran? I've ran into exactly what you were saying. I've had people that are in their 50s, 60s, 70s. And then I'm like, they're looking to buy something. I'm like, well, are you a veteran? Yeah. Have you ever used your VA benefit? Don't think so. Will it help me? And then I'm like, are you kidding me? It's the best program around. So that's kind of what's going on there. So Dave, what I try to do real quick is just bring people up to speed on what's going on with the economic stuff and things like that. So first thing I want to just talk about real fast is the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve came out today, folks, and they didn't do anything in regards to rates, which we thought. So now the pivot point you're going to start seeing is there's going to be, here's the distraction pieces that you're going to start seeing now. Well, the dot plot is telling us this. So what a dot plot is basically they're telling you they're going out in time, the Fed, and they're going out there and they're plotting, thinking where they think rates are going to be in the next year, 2 or 3. Guys, they don't even know where it's going to be next month. Okay, so that's the first thing. The other thing you're going to start seeing in mainstream media is they're going to say, well, see, they said in here they're going to raise rates 2 more times this year. There's nowhere in the transcripts that they said that. What they did say, and they've said at every other meeting and every other time that they raise rates, is we're going to continually monitor this, in detail and do what we have to do. And they've had it. So if you watch my video from or just earlier today, I showed you the transcripts. They only changed about 10 words in the whole transcripts. So don't let mainstream media tell you, oh, they're going to raise rates 2 more times. They might, but they might not. So that's basically just, I want to give you guys, make sure you don't go with the head fakes of, the Federal Reserve is going to raise rates 2 more times, the dot plots and all that. Guys, it's a smoke screen. Okay. The inflation is coming down. Is it perfect? No. Are rates great? No. But they're at where they are. I think maybe I don't think they're going to, Dave, you've been doing this long enough. Here's the question you get every day as well as me. When's rates going to go back down to 3? The answer?
Never.
Okay. Got it.
Dan, when I tell people is that if you can afford where rates are today, just go ahead and buy, because just like everyone before you, people refinanced and then they were able to get to that sweet spot. So guess what? If rates drop in a year or 2 years, you can always refinance like everyone else, right? When rates were low, people are like, I'm waiting, I'm saving myself when the housing market goes down. Well, people are saying people overpaid. Well, at 2.25%, I'd rather overpay $100,000 and I'd still have a lower payment than today's market rate with where the values are at. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely. Like even the neighborhood I'm in, I was talking to a neighbor recently, and he's like, I'm here because the rates are so low. I'd never be able to afford to live here if it wasn't for rates. So kudos. My oldest son, he bought a house. I've already refinanced. I refinanced him when rates, he got a 30-year fix at 2.625. He can rent out his home and have a huge cash flow. And he just bought 3 years. So, but what a lot of people would say, oh, you guys are just pumping FOMO in real estate. No, we're not. No. That's not what we're here for, folks. We're here to educate you guys. So without further ado, I don't know if there's any questions. I know summertime gets a little daunting for you guys. And for those out there that are watching, thank you so much. It's summertime. You could be at the pool. You could be at soccer practice. You could be over here. You could be out to dinner, doing a ton of other things. And you're sitting here trying to learn this process. So that's why we come on here to answer any and all questions that you have. We do have information down below. If you have questions, you want to get, kick the tires on, can you qualify for a VA loan? Are my benefits good enough or whatever? We have an apply now button down below. Okay. All we need you to do is hit that, fill out as much information as you can. Somebody will be with you within 24 hours. I promise you, to answer any and all the questions that you have. So do you know if we have any live questions yet?
Nothing yet. But then, to kind of harp on what you talk about, is that a lot of people disqualify themselves before they talk with a loan officer. And it's kind of one of the number one things from almost any loan perspective, because they will look at videos online. They will talk to their battle buddies in the military, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you can't do that." And then next thing you know, they've said no to home ownership when they could have actually become a homeowner, right? And there's just these common myths that are out there that military members just, even in today's time with technology, which sometimes it's a blessing and sometimes it's a curse. So definitely talk with somebody.
Until we get some questions to post. And like I said, the summertime is tough with live events. So we want to do this video so we educate people over time. So can you go over, the first thing is, let's say I'm a veteran, but how do I know what I qualify for? So what would be my first step to do to just say, am I eligible for the VA benefits?
Right.
So walk me through where do we go from there?
Dan, great question right there, right? So there's two parts to a VA home loan. There's going to be the eligibility. Do you meet the time and service and the character of discharge to use the VA home loan? And then you have also the qualification, right? Do you have the credit, the collateral, the capacity to be able to make your payments, right? So there's two parts to that piece. When you talk with somebody like myself or like us, right? We pull what's called a certificate of eligibility, which shows us, hey, you're eligible to use the VA home loan. They don't always come back right away. And there's also been new rules, especially for like National Guard members, where they can actually qualify much sooner than most people think to use the VA home loan. But once you figure that piece out, the other component is the qualification piece. That's when you submit an application. You submit your income documents, your assets, your tax returns if it's necessary. And basically, the lender takes a look at that whole piece and says, well, you're qualified now up to an X payment, which is roughly an X dollar amount for a purchase, right? And most people don't realize that they can purchase, a single family home, which a lot of people do realize with the VA home loan. You can buy a condo. You can buy a planned unit development that's like buying into a community that has like a low HOA. And you can also purchase a multi-unit property, so a 2 to 4 unit, and actually live for free, which a lot of people don't realize the VA home loan can be used for that. And like, especially in Chicago, like, as you know, there's so many multi-units that are out there that people could take advantage of in order to be able to generate cash flow. But again, everyone's situation is a little bit different. So talking with the lender, they'll pull your certificate of eligibility. You'll submit all your financial documents. They need to review that because I'll tell you, Dan, I get calls from agents across the country and clients from doing videos like this where, a week away from closing, they might start having some issues, right? And that's because people don't review all their information. And it's insane to me.
Right.
Especially after all that money you've spent. And it's kind of like, well, we can come in, look at it. Or sometimes, closing costs might be an issue. And that's why, we're able to offer and pretty much beat anybody that's out there, at least from what I've seen. So just be very careful when you're shopping around lenders and talking with loan officers, because the biggest veteran banks that are out there also charge the most amount in fees. So you kind of have to be careful about that.
Yeah. So so they get their certificate of eligibility, and now they realize, oh, I can buy a house. So now kind of walk us down the guidelines. Can what's the minimum credit score you can go? I know the debt ratio, people kind of freak out when they hear, VA loans can go up to like a 67% debt ratio. And people, automatically get ticked off. They're like, why are you putting people in this situation that can't afford their homes? So can you go over just the minor details that somebody would be like, why my credit score is this? Do I qualify? And just kind of down that avenue.
Yeah. So technically, the VA doesn't have a minimum credit score, but majority of lenders do, right? So with us, we're able to go down to a 500 credit score. So there's definitely a lot of some options for that. Now, obviously, it's going to depend on if there's lates or bankruptcies, things like that are all going to be factored into that. But there's definitely hope for anyone's situation, no matter what credit position you're in, because at least we can walk you through how to get out of the position that you're in. And with time, everyone's credit would be perfect, no matter how blemished it might be, because within 7 years, it all falls off, right? So as long as you're just staying on track with making payments with what you do have, that's one key component to that. And then you made a good point too about, well, why do veterans, how can veterans get loans with 67, 70% debt to income ratios? Well, that's because the VA actually looks at their net income, what's called residual income. That's why when you look at like debt to income ratios, they don't factor all that in, right? They just kind of look at the lump sum, and everyone's situation is a little bit different. So when they look at the net income, they subtract out all your taxes, they subtract out all your liabilities. In fact, they actually also count the square footage of the property, which includes like your heating, air conditioning, all of that fun stuff, against you for the purposes of qualifying for a home loan, which is very unique. And then they set you a certain dollar amount that basically they say that you can live on for a certain dollar amount, right? But at the end of the day, if a veteran is qualified to purchase a property, I can't tell them no, right? Everyone's situation is different with their budget. Their spouse might be working, but we're not putting them on the application because they might have had a credit blemish, or they just started their job too soon and we don't want to count their liabilities against them. right? There's a lot of factors that go into how do you determine who goes on the loan, or how do we look at these different ratios. And the nice thing with VA home loans, in a way, is that you don't really need to have reserves, right? You don't need to have X amount of payments in the event you were, to lose a job or something like that. Like the VA loan doesn't require that, which some
How
loan
much money?
products out there do.
How much money do they need for a down payment when they're buying a VA loan, doing a VA loan?
0. So recently the VA changed its rules a couple years ago. If you don't have an outstanding VA home loan at the time of closing on your property, then you won't have a limit on what you can purchase without a down payment. So someone might have, if someone wants to buy $1.5 million property with no money down, they're actually able to do that. 2
That's
million, 3
nuts.
million, the VA loan doesn't have a limit on that.
To be honest, you know how long I've done this. I
Right.
learned that 2 years ago. Never in my wildest dreams knew it was like, I got a VA person. I'm like, they're looking to buy a $1.5 million home. I can't do that. And then I started really digging in, and I'm like, I can do that. So that's intriguing. Another thing is, I'm sorry, I'm just throwing up stuff because I'm thinking of questions now too. Here's an avenue that we were able to save and help a lot of people in the last few years. The disabled. If you're disabled, I'll ask you the question. Are most states, like if you're 70% disabled or more, do most states also remove or you're exempt from real estate taxes? Because I know most states have that. Are all states that way?
So if you have a service-connected disability, right, up to a certain percentage, depending on the county and or state, then you will have a waiver. Right now, I'll give you some quick examples. Like Illinois, it's 70% service-connected disability, right? At 70%, you don't pay property taxes up to a certain dollar amount. In Texas, it has to be like 100% permanent in total in order to not pay property taxes. And I think in like Kentucky, it's got to be 100% permanent in total, and you have to have like lost a limb to get the tax breaks.
It varies.
It varies widely. Yeah,
and then
and then we got a question also from somebody. It says that they have a client that's based in Texas and wants to take cash out. Can they move back to Virginia? If yes, how much of a funding fee will be charged? So I think it's just to get clarity on that question, is the client's property located in Virginia?
They might not answer, but if you could try to generically answer they might post, but they might not. So if you could just kind of, what are they talking about? That's an area
Texas,
where
Texas, you can't do a cash out refi. There's like they have some kind of they have some kind of weird rules. Can't do HELOCs on the second mortgages. Yeah, so they have some the weird rules to that property. But if they're, let's say, PCSing to the Virginia area, they can definitely use the VA home loan again as long as they have enough entitlement. And then also when they move to Virginia, they'll be going into a higher county limit. So instead of 726,200, it goes to $1,089,300. And so if someone does a cash out refi on a property and they don't have a service connected disability, the VA funding fee is going to be 3.3%. Right. So that's going to be on any kind of cash out refi, no matter how much equity they have, it will always be 3.3%. It's the highest one you can do. Now, if you have service connected disability, then you won't pay the VA funding fee. Right. So typically, you're going to have, everyone will tell you it's 10% or more, but I've had plenty of veterans that have a 0% service connected rating and they get the exemption. What a 0% means is that you don't have enough of a life effect that they're saying, well, you have a 10%. They're basically acknowledging that, yes, this happened in the service. So down later in life, if that starts bothering you, they can actually then give you a rating because it's already service connected, right? So that's why they do that. And I've only seen 2 of those in my entire career.
Got it. But it's possible. It's like, was it Dumb and Dumber? So you say I got a chance.
Yeah. And then actually a good question came from this is, can you move from a VA loan to a conventional loan and back to a VA home loan? All right, that's actually a really good there's some technicalities to that. So if you buy a property with a conventional loan, and during like when the rates really dropped, a lot of people tried to buy condos and they were basically forced to use conventional loans because no one knew how to do the condo approvals or the condo waivers, right? So then we were refinance a lot of people out of a conventional loan into a VA loan. That's considered a cash out refinance. Okay. No matter if it's not a cash out or not, it's still considered a cash out. It's how the VA does it. It's weird. If you refinance a VA loan into a conventional loan, you still lock in your benefits into the VA home loan, even though you get a different mortgage. You would have to ask for like a one-time restoration, and then you'd be able to use the VA home loan one more time, and then you would have to sell both properties in order to buy a third VA home loan. It's like a super quirky thing, but a lot of people talk about using the VA home loan as an investment vehicle, and they're like, oh, I'm just going to buy a property, refinance out of it, buy another one, refinance out of it. But you actually tie in your benefits into the property itself. So that's like a weird thing when you pay off your mortgage, right? You don't refinance it, so you just pay it off all the way. It's the same thing. It's not like your VA benefits get freed up. They're still locked into that property and the original entitlement.
Really? I never knew that.
Yeah, I came up, this happened to me like 5 years ago. Of course, it happened to me. The veteran's like, I paid off my house. I'm doing a cash out refinance on a VA loan. And then we get the paperwork done, and then they're like, you can't because the home is paid off. So you can't do a cash out refi with a VA loan on a property that's paid off with a VA home loan. That's one. It's like a weird, quirky thing. And then if you refinance out of a VA home loan into a conventional loan, you actually lock your benefits into the property, and you can ask for a one-time restoration. So, that's like yeah.
That's pretty cool. I mean, that's kind of sucks a little bit.
But
you had it good standings, you paid it good.
But I guess if you just transfer title to somebody else, you basically have sold the property.
Got it. So you can so let's say, for example, like the 100%, you can cash out on a VA loan up to 100% and pay off bills. So from my understanding, from what you said, though, the house can't be paid off to do that, right? You still have to have some remaining balance on the house. You can do that and then pay off bills. So if the house is paid off, you cannot do a VA loan just to pull out
cash out.
Got it. Okay. So interesting. But yeah, on the VA, sorry guys, I'm sitting on a chair and my cushion keeps sliding. So I don't mean to keep bumping, head butting the screen. So you guys out there, it's probably not the time to do it. But a lot of times when rates went, they were down in the twos, we had hundreds and thousands of people reaching out to us looking for, to debt consolidation, all this other stuff. VA, it's one of the only ones that'll go 100% financing of the house in cash out so you can pay off bills. So you're buried in debt right now. You might have a good rate, but you have 50. I just pulled credit on somebody the other day and they had $80,000 in credit cards. Okay, you might have a 3% rate now, but your credit cards are probably at 20, 25.
Right.
That's one where you maybe do an analysis saying, would this make sense? So I'm just throwing out some ideas up there.
So we got a question now, Dan, too.
Sure.
My friend paid me back in a check, and the underwriter asked for a source. Is a copy of the check enough, or is it a red flag? So I think the question is that if, we've had this happen, right? People go on vacation, all of a sudden they Venmo like $3,000 or $2,000 to their friend. And now all of a sudden we're starting to question where that money came from, right? So it's going to really depend on your situation, because technically they just need to ask for a check, a letter of explanation, and like you provide some proof, like, hey, we went somewhere, or like I lent them the money and they paid it back to me. That normally should suffice to be able to satisfy that underwriting condition. The other piece with that is that if you don't need the money, right, because you have sufficient assets to cover closing costs, you can just ask them to back the money out of your assets, and just like that, they'll remove it. So again, let's say, just to use an example, right, you need $8,000 for closing costs. You have 15 in the bank, and 2,000 of that was because someone paid you back. You could just ask the bank, go ahead and back the 2,000 out, and they won't even count it against you. They'll just use the 14,000 in assets, and you only need 8 of that anyways.
See, but you'll also have, and this is where Dave comes into play versus other people, is you'll have underwriters come back and say, no, I can't do that. I've
Right.
had that
Yeah.
happen hundreds of times. And then you got to go through the guidelines, pick up the VA, things, screenshot your screenshots, send it
Yeah.
to the underwriters. I just call Dave. And it's like, Dave, can I do this? Yep. Can you have anything that'll let me know that? Yep. And then in 24, 40 hours, we usually have it cleared. And I'm like, thanks, Dave. So
Yeah.
I thought I'd share him with you guys out here for all the veterans out there. We don't do a lot of VA loans. And I can't figure out to the life of me why. Because like you said, a lot of them go to other those big vendor things. Their rates are fantastic, but they'll usually charge you an arm and a leg to get it done. So even though you're getting 100% financing, you don't have to bring anything, to the closing because of that. Those closing costs can add up real fast.
Oh yeah.
So what other quirky things do you have that's, I don't know, maybe it's not the word quirky. What other things that most people just completely miss? They're like, I didn't even know that.
Well, there's a weird thing depending on the community property states.
Yep.
Right. So in those states, if a veteran is purchasing a property, let's just say by themselves, and they have a spouse, but the veteran's the only one that's on the mortgage, because let's say the spouse has bad credit, whatever the case may be, veterans going in on their own. Well, the lender in a community property states, there's 7 of them, and I do not know them off the top of my head.
I
know
just
Wisconsin
this morning.
Yeah, I think I know Wisconsin. I think Arizona is one. Washington is another. Is that, and Louisiana, is that the spouse's credit report needs to still be pulled, even though they're not on the mortgage, and their liabilities will actually count against the veteran purchasing a property. Now, what most people don't know is that if the spouse can support their own debt, then you can actually offset their own payments by their own income and not affect the buyer of the veteran purchasing the property. So that's like a quirky thing that I've argued with so many people about, like other lenders and realtors, where they're, because people call me and I'm like, hey, you can do it. This is how you do it. And they're like, no, everyone's telling me you can't do it. I'm like, I use those reading skills, Dan. Like, yes, you can. And then, and so like another cool one is when I work with student veterans, because I do a lot of presentations for colleges.
Yeah.
And with the VA home loan, again, this is more, you can, if you're a disabled veteran, you can use 100% of your VA disability to qualify for a home, and that could be your only income. We do plenty of loans with just VA disability as income. The other part to that is that if you have a spouse and they're gainfully employed and you're going to school, because you can't use BAH from your GI Bill to qualify for a home loan. But let's say you're not working, you're going to school, or you're just not working, your spouse is gainfully employed, you can actually just use your spouse's income as long as you're both on the mortgage and use your VA home loan.
Interesting.
That's insane.
So there's ways to maneuver this. People, I get it. People, they talk to somebody and they're like, oh, I was kind of in that same boat, couldn't get it done. Just to let you guys know out there, what Dave's talking about, one, he knows the guidelines like the back of his hand. But the other thing is, lenders have what's called overlays. Okay, so here's what an overlay is. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you remember, but Dave said VA loans don't really have a minimum credit score, but almost every lender requires that you have at least a 500 credit score. That's an overlay, meaning the true guidelines are X, but this bank is throwing over additional guidelines on top of those. So, for example, you can do a 500 credit score. I would ask you, call 100 different banks if you're looking for a VA loan and tell me you have a 500 credit score. I can almost assure you 98 of them are going to hang up on you because they have an overlay of a minimum credit score. And they could have an overlay for a debt ratio. So you might call a lender that you have a great credit score, but your debt ratio is over 55. And they're like, I can't do it. Your debt ratio is too high. And then Dave might come in and say, you're approved. And you're like, why? How? Well, that's how. Because that's one of the reasons why we choose. We work at the bank, and Dave works with us. But we're also one of the country's largest brokers. So we have opportunities all over the place. And that was one thing that attracted Dave to join our team was you guys have all these options, which are really cool. Instead of me working at this bank where I just have the bank product and really good at doing it, but what other options can I provide people? So that's why we strive. We are a federally chartered bank, but we're also one of the country's largest brokers because we want to give you guys the best opportunity to help you find that loan, being able to get it done without overlays and all this other stuff, and get you a very good rate with very minimal fees. So that's what we do. And I do a lot of videos. I show people behind the screen on how we price loans and all that other stuff. But anything else pop up there?
Nothing yet. And it's to tag on to that too, Dan, is that you have different components to a loan. Is you have rates and fees, which are important, but you also have the experience you're going to get. And what I feel a lot of times, military members will go with some of these big banks that market to them constantly, right? Yeah. Is that I don't know about you, but I feel like there's always something that happens in a transaction, right? There's always something that goes wrong, no matter how how great you want it to go and how easy something seems. Something always comes up.
Yeah.
And when you hire someone, just like for work or anything else, you're not hiring them for the good times because anybody can make it. Anybody could, fake it till they make it when things are good. It's when the things go bad or things are falling apart or you're like, no one's answering my questions. I have questions on the weekends, in the evenings, right? When people are looking at homes, when they're talking with family, for someone to be there, answer your questions, someone to be able to bounce ideas off to say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Should I be doing this? Right. And someone can give you that honest opinion because that's what we do. We're just not a call center. We're not just, we're not fresh out of college, which I wish I was. And knowing what I know now, take that back. That'd be great. Yeah, I wouldn't have the gray beard. But it's just like being able to help families make decisions that's best for them, right? Especially with military. It's like, you're on active duty, you're PCSing across the country. Dan, I get some heartfelt calls at times where they're like, we thought everything was okay. We already left our duty station. We're going somewhere else. And now we're just facing issues. Like that's not a position to be in. Right. And we have veterans that are moving all the time across the country, or they might have, some type of medical or PTSD or something like that. Like you want to be able to communicate with people in the way they can understand and have a good experience.
Yep. And be accessible.
Right.
That's one of the things. But the biggest thing is, especially in this sphere, a lot of people don't get it, is that our knowledge might be the difference of them getting into the house or not. Right. There's a lot of, you've been doing this long enough. There's a lot of paper pushers. Like you said, if the credit score is 800, they got the money for the down payment, everything else just flies right through. But at the last minute, something comes back on the inspection. Something comes back on the appraisal. Something comes back on title. Something comes back on that. And then you have these people like, we don't know what to do. So that's where you really want to protect yourself. So, and that was one of the reasons why I asked you to come on here, because there's even I don't know the VA stuff. And I know basically the programs all over the map, even the non-QM and the bank statement loans. VA is an area. It baffles me because it's just every lender that the whole point behind it is, and you've experienced this. Yeah. Who was the underwriter you were talking about to the other day, and they got back with you like the next day and said, sorry, you're right. We called VA and you're right. Who I won't, you don't have to say the lender.
Yeah, I'd rather not say, because that happens on an every other day basis where they're like, we're arguing, and I'm like, well, this is what they say. So
Dave had a debate, I guess, with a VA underwriter the other day. They called VA to kind of prove him wrong, but then they found out that he was right. So they're changing their guidelines. Yeah. That's pretty impressive, buddy. So that's really cool. Trying to think of other things, like my mom, she's I had one for you yesterday. I talked to you about is a deceased, a spouse of a deceased veteran. What options do they have?
That's a great question. And you know what? We don't come across that much. Okay. So I'll tell you what I do know, because otherwise I could just look it up, and in a future show we can just like type it up a little bit later. Is that so the way a spouse can use a deceased veteran's benefits is if the veteran passed away on active duty. Now, this doesn't have to be like they died in combat. It was just like they were driving home, had a heart attack, or got hit by a car, they passed away. That benefit transfers to the spouse. Okay. And then if the veteran is not on active duty, but they pass away from their service connected disability, then they also get the loan transferred to them. Now, I believe now this is where I go into the I believe portion, because I think they have to actually fill out some paperwork with the VA to make sure that they have that. So like that part I'm unsure of. But then they can actually use that benefit. And if they pass away from a service connected disability, they don't get charged a VA funding fee. It's actually pretty cool to do. And I've just done a handful of them. We just really don't come across too many people.
There was a lady I tried to help last year that her husband passed from. He just passed. He was old, and there was just tons of paperwork we had to do.
Yeah,
and it went through time, and then it came back and it was denied. And then we're trying to, and I don't know. I that's when I admitted to her, I'm like, I don't know this stuff. I don't know the VA benefits and all that like the back of my hand. So I would have to trust what they're saying. So he wasn't, he was in the service. He might have been in World War II or, in a war a long, long, long time ago. And he just passed of old age. And so he would not qualify. So the other day when you were saying, it can't happen, I was intrigued on how it comes about. So that was awesome. So we covered. So the first thing they need to do is we need to see if you're interested in pursuing and trying to get a house. The first thing that you need to do is we have a link down below that you can click to apply online. Dave and his team, he handles all of our VA loans. He'll get back with you within 24 hours, and he's going to answer all those questions. So let's help you get your ducks in a row. The first thing I want to say is, we're not pumping FOMO here, folks. We're not, saying real estate's for everybody. If you've decided that it is for you at this time and you're like, okay, I really want to see, can I get into a VA loan? I would highly suggest you reach out to us, because Dave knows more than anybody I know in this business. And that's pretty impressive. So, we're going to go through, he's going to help you make sure your certificate of eligibility is there. Okay. Right. We're going to go over your credit. He's going to, he'll pull credit and go over all that with you. Then he's going to go over your income, but he's going to go over him and Mason. And he has a team of people behind him as well. They know this stuff, and they're going to get back with you and go over all the details and questions. And if anybody gets stumped, they'll go to Dave, because he knows more than any underwriter that we know. And he can back us up saying, not everybody can get approved, but if there's hope there, Dave's going to push it through, and he's going to go through every guideline, turn over every rock to make sure you qualify for that. So if you're out there looking for anything of that, is there anything else that we could go over that just help? Because it's amazing. I've done this for 34 years. I've probably done, and that's a long time, I might have done 100 VA loans. That's not even a trickle. And I still, I guess I'll blame it on to the point of, there's just not enough education out there for those out there that have the ability, is approved for this thing, but just doesn't know where to go.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is getting information out there like we're doing today is what it helps people, because again, I run into people on active duty, been in the service 34 years. And they didn't even realize that they had their VA home loan benefits. I'm like, I'm mind blown, because I do that.
It's a shame, really.
It's a shame because, I'll tell you some of the common VA home loan myths that I come across. I just did a presentation yesterday. I'm saving my VA home loan because I could only use it once. And I'm like, what? Like, no, it's a life benefit. You can use it multiple times. You can buy and sell. And this is at a class of 40 realtors. I did an MRP course not too long ago also, and the lady in the front was a Navy veteran, and she's like, I'm like, do you use your VA loan to buy a place? She's like, no, we're saving it for our next home. And I'm like, what do you mean you're saving it? You can use it multiple times. So a lot of people don't know that. Another big one is that I can only have one VA home loan at a time. Well, that's not true. You can have multiple VA home loans. Now, at some point, you'll be required to have a down payment, but you need to really look at the full spectrum to see what you can do. Another one that we get is that you can't buy an income property, which the VA loan is designed to be a primary residence, right? But if you buy a multi-unit, like we talked about, you can actually buy a property, live in one of the units, and then be able to generate income off it. And you can move out of a VA home loan that's your primary residence and turn it into an investment property without any issues. There's nothing you have to do. Right? The only thing that might change is your taxes on the property, because that's going to change depending on where you're at in the country. That's going to change. And then if you have a service connected disability where you're getting a property tax waiver, that's typically only designed for a primary residence. And to note, Dan, now I'm kind of thinking back when we talked about the like, let's say in Illinois, you meet the disability requirement.
Yeah.
It's up to a certain dollar amount, right? It's on a primary residence. Yes, you can use them on multi-units, and you don't need to use a VA home loan in order to get your exemption. You just need to be on the title of the property.
Got it. Those are a lot of things I didn't know. So I can understand why there's a lot of confusion, because unless you really reached out to somebody like yourself, it's like
Right.
hearsay, whatever. And then, a lot of, when you're trying to watch other videos and stuff like that, it can get really confusing. So that's why I asked Dave to come on here, because, again, we don't do a lot of VA loans, and I'm wanting to turn that around, because on my channel, what I strive for, and Dave does the same thing. You listen to his background. He's not only he's in the service, but he teaches, he trains, he does this. He was out yesterday teaching 40 realtors. So he's not just like a loan officer that just sits behind his desk and closes 2-3 loans a month. He lives this stuff. And like I said at the beginning, this is a guy that's he's in the VA industry mortgage, but he lives it and breathes it, and it's just in his bones. And your father was in the service as well, isn't your like
my dad wasn't, but my father, because I'm first generation born here in the U.S., Polish, and my grandfather fought in the resistance during World War II in Poland.
Yeah. My dad was in the World War II as well. We lost him a couple years ago, and
Wow.
He was in World War II here. That was great, and that's why I was like, I really want to help veterans, but it's a hard nut to crack, especially when you're going against these behemoths out there with all this marketing power to say, hey, we're your VA person. I'm not saying anything bad about them. I'm just saying sometimes, if you want to pay those fees and everything, but if you really want to talk to somebody who knows what they're doing, Dave's your guy. So, is there any other comments? If not, we can what I do want, Dave, is I want you to give them, where do you hold your classes? How can people follow you more to maybe visit one of your classes? I mean, you're in Virginia half the month. You're over here. You're traveling the country. Is there a spot where you have like a calendar or something like that, giving us promotional stuff?
Yeah, definitely. So if you go to vahousingeducation.com, you can see right when you click on the courses, it will tell you every second Tuesday of the month at 6 Central, 7 Eastern time, we do a from service to home ownership class. So it's for all the military members and spouses out there. Every fourth Tuesday of the month, we do a specialty class like this fourth. In 27th of this month at 6 p.m. Central, 7 Eastern time, we're doing a first time sellers class. So military members that are thinking about selling, because, hey, they purchased in the last couple of years, like, I need to learn how that process works, right? A lot of people don't know. So we do those classes all the time. And the beautiful thing is we do them virtually. So anybody across the world can join. So, also check out the YouTube channel, vahousingeducation.com. I do a lot of shorts just kind of talking about, hey, these are the things that are changing. So yeah, we appreciate any feedback also from you guys.
Dude, you're amazing. I can't thank you enough for joining the team. Can't thank you enough for doing what you're doing, and especially reaching out and letting all these viewers kind of pick your brain. So if you guys need any assistance, you're out there looking to sell, buy, maybe you got a bunch of debts that you're just like, I need some help with this stuff. Or maybe you've just been turned down by somebody and you're like, hey, I just want to give this a second chance. Dave's information is down below. Even if you're watching from my channel, down the description button, if you hit the apply now button, it's going straight to Dave. If it doesn't, for example, if I end up getting it, I might call you. Just let me know saying, hey, Dan, I need a VA loan, because it'll come up in the application where those go right over to Dave anyways. So Dave, I want to thank you so much. Again, like where I prompted this, many videos like in the fall and the winter. We have so many people on here asking questions. Summertime's a little bit tougher, but I did want to continue to ask those questions for you, because even though we don't have people online right now asking questions, this video is going to stay out there forever. So I hope
Awesome.
millions of people find this and get some guidance from this. So I want to thank you guys out there. Dave, again, thank you for joining the team. I appreciate having you. I appreciate everything you guys do. And please, guys, if you need any assistance with any of this, we're here for you. So God bless.
Thank you, Dan.
And we will see you next time. And Dave's going to be joining us once a month, so please watch out for his little thumbnails out there on my video channel, live events, as well as his. He'll be back with us once a month to answer all the questions that you guys have. Thanks so much, and look forward to seeing you next time.
All right, guys. See ya.